What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and today I have another draft strategy video for you guys. So I've already gone through picks 1 through 4, picks 5 through 8. Today we're focusing on the best draft strategy if you're picking towards the back end of the first round, pick 9, 10, 11, or 12. I'm going to be going through some of the targets I'd be looking at in the first 3 rounds of your drafts, and then I'll also be going through 4 different mock drafts, one from pick 9, 10, 11, and 12, just to kind of show you guys what teams you can put together if you do have a late first round pick. At this point in the offseason, I feel like this kind of section, back end of the first, is probably my least favorite pick. I think I like the early first more, and then I think I like the mid-second kind of in second place here. But I still think you can put together some solid teams. You can get some solid builds. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today. If you guys enjoy the video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. But let's jump right into some early round targets. So starting off in round 1, this is going to be consensus ADP from Sleeper, ESPN, and Yahoo. And then you can see this graphic here is color-coded. So green would be players I think are really solid picks in this 9 to 12 area. Yellow, I think they're fine picks, maybe, not my favorite targets, but I don't think they're bad picks. And then red would just be players I'd be looking to avoid in this spot. So starting off with Bijan Robinson here, if you're getting Bijan or Breece to slip to the 109 or later, I think those are just smash picks. I don't think it's going to happen super often, but in one of the mocks, like Breece Hall slipped to this area, so I don't think it's impossible. So if either of those running backs are slipping, I think, just fantastic picks. You smash the draft button. I also think Amon-Ra St. Brown, a great value in this spot. I have him ranked as a top 8 player, so if you're getting him 9 or later, I like it. And then I have these wide receivers in a tier, so A.J. Brown, Puka Nacua, Garrett Wilson, have all those 3 guys together. I think anywhere in the first round or like late first round are nice picks. Also have Jahmyr Gibbs, I believe, is my 9th ranked player, so getting him, 202, I think is great. Also would take him in the first round. Jonathan Taylor, personally, I don't have him in my top 12. I think I have him at 13, maybe 14. So for me, like late first would be a little bit of a reach, but I don't hate it, especially on platforms where running backs are going to go off the board very quickly. Maybe you want to lock him down. Saquon's really the only guy here that I'd be pretty against drafting. I'd be fine taking Saquon like early second. I prefer him more mid-second or later, but he's probably not going to fall there. But first round, he would just not be on my radar. Now looking at some of the round 2 targets, since this is, the 1-2 turn, we have some of the same names here. Puka, I would take him in round 1. I would definitely take him in round 2. Same thing with Garrett Wilson, Jahmyr Gibbs. Saquon, like I said, didn't love him in round 1. Round 2, like early round 2, it's a little bit more palatable, so I'm fine with it here. Same thing with Kyren Williams. Would prefer to take him in like the mid-second, but if you want a running back, I don't hate it. Also think Marvin Harrison Jr. is a solid early round 2 pick. I know it seems very early to take a rookie wide receiver there, and it does seem, pretty unprecedented. It's crazy, but I think he's in a great situation. The wide receiver from like the back end wide receiver 1s through the wide receiver 2s, it's very, very flat, so I'm fine taking him in the early second. Devontae Adams, Derrick Henry, just personally guys that I would not be looking to target in the early second round. And then the final targets here, round 3, we start off with Jalen Hurts, and this is kind of the area where I'd start to consider these elite quarterbacks. So Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, if they're going back end of round 3, that's where I'd look to hit the draft button on them. Nico Collins, Michael Pittman, Deebo Samuel, love those wide receivers if they're going late round 3. I'm not a huge Stephon Diggs guy. Like you can see, I'd take Pittman, Deebo over them. Some of the wide receivers going later, I would even take them over Diggs. But I think like in terms of where he'd actually be going in drafts, based on my rankings, late round 3, I think is fine for Stephon Diggs. Not super big on Lamar here. I talked about how I'd be willing to take Allen Hurts. I think Lamar's a little bit behind those guys in my rankings, so would not take him late round 3. And then I just think it's too early to be going for guys like Rachaad White, Joe Mixon, not players I'd be wanting to take in the 3rd round of fantasy drafts. So those were some of the early round targets. Now let's jump into the mock drafts. So we're going to start off here with the 9th pick, the 109, and this was the one I kind of referenced earlier where we got Breece Hall to fall to us at the 109. If Breece Hall's going there, I'm smashing that draft button. I'm locking him up to be my running back 1. Then at the 204, I think this is where like late round 1 picks can kind of get gross because I don't think there are great values at this spot. I ended up going with Saquon Barkley. I think a lot of people are actually going to really like this start, and I don't hate it, going back-to-back running backs here with Breece Hall, Saquon Barkley, kind of a double hero RB build, just locking down those running back positions and then, going elsewhere later on. So that's the start. Then we get Jalen Waddle, like mid to late round 3. Super cool with that price tag on Jalen Waddle. And then we end up getting Jalen Hurts here at the 404. Something I noticed with picking in the late first round is that you don't get a ton of, falling quarterback value compared to like the mid to early first round, just what I kind of noticed here. But we get Jalen Hurts at the 404. Like I said, I'd be willing to take him in the late third. So getting him, 404, I think is great value. We lock Jalen Hurts up to be our quarterback 1. And this is also why I'm not trying to reach for Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, like late round 2, early round 3. Typically, there's going to be value falling, and we got that here in this draft. Then in the 5th round, we went with Christian Kirk. Don't think the value's crazy there, but I'm cool with him as a wide receiver too. Seems like a pretty safe option. Then we got Kyle Pitts in round 6. And one thing I actually like about picking at the back end of the first round is that I think throughout these drafts, we got a lot of interesting values at the tight end position. Sometimes you may have to reach in other draft spots, or maybe you just don't get falling value. You kind of punt the position. In pretty much every draft here, I thought there were interesting options available at the tight end position. So I will definitely take Kyle Pitts at the 604. I know some people are probably going to be out on him. He hasn't really paid off for fantasy yet, but he is in a far better offensive situation than we've seen in his previous 3 seasons, so I'm still very in on Kyle Pitts. Now, typically, when I'm drafting 2 running backs early on, I'm normally just punting the position, maybe snagging a few later round options, but Jonathan Brooks here at the 709, I didn't really love what was available at the wide receiver position, and I'm very in on Jonathan Brooks, so I end up snagging him to be my running back 3. Like I said, not something I would typically do, but if the value's there, I'm not going to pass up on him. But then we have to start getting serious about the wide receiver position. We go Deontay Johnson, Brian Thomas Jr., and Curtis Samuel back to back to back. That gives us 5 wide receivers at this point. Some guys that I think could slide into the flex throughout the season. Then we go 1 later round running back, Chase Brown in round 11. Love the value there and kind of an ambiguous backfield. And then we wrap this draft up with Dontavian Wicks. If I'm taking an early round quarterback, a solid tight end, I'm not going to double up on those positions. I think since we went, pretty running back heavy early on, I'm fine only having 4. And then we have 6 wide receivers, not the strongest at the wide receiver position, but I think the depth is there, some interesting options. So I think that draft played out pretty well from the 9th overall spot. Now the next one from the 110, we start off here with a Jahmyr Gibbs pick at the 110. We didn't get, a crazy value on like a falling wide receiver or one of those like Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson guys. So we go with Jahmyr Gibbs. I think he's a fine pick here at the 110. Now we did get some nice value at the 203 because like I said earlier on, I'd be willing to take Puka Nacua in like the later first round. We get Puka here at the 203, which pretty much in my opinion is giving us like 2 back-end round 1 picks in terms of value. So I like that start with Jahmyr Gibbs, Puka Nacua, and in this specific draft, we got pretty serious about the wide receiver position. I went DJ Moore in round 3, then I went Tank Dell in round 4. Now I think some people would have taken Sam Laporta there, and I don't think that's a terrible pick, honestly taking him like late round 3 or early round 4, but Tank Dell was my best player available there, so we snagged him. We're going to go early tight end in a different draft, so you'll still get to see one of those builds. After Tank Dell, then we go with George Pickens, late round 5, like that pick there. And then once again, we got to look at Kyle Pitts at the 603. 6th round Kyle Pitts, just not going to pass up on him. At this point, I've kind of accepted that I'm probably going to punt the quarterback position. All the elite ceiling guys are gone. Richardson went off the board in the 5th. I'm not going to be taking 6th round Dak Prescott. Probably not going to be taking 7th round Joe Burrow. So I've kind of accepted we're just going to go late round quarterback. I get Raheem Mostert in the 7th. The dude who was like the running back 4 in points per game last year, I understand he's old. Devon Achan's a stud. I'm very high on Achan. But getting a guy who was a top 5 running back last year in the 7th round just seems like a pretty easy pick. So Mostert there is going to be my running back 2. Then we go back to the wide receiver position with Ladd McConkey. And at this point, we have 5 wide receivers that I feel pretty good about. The 4 starting ones are just studs. Puka, DJ Moore, Tank Dell, George Pickens, and then having Ladd McConkey, who should be the clear-cut wide receiver 1 for the Chargers, having him on the bench I think just gives us a ton of depth here. We go back to the running back position with Gus Edwards, someone who looks like is going to be leading this Chargers running back room. And then here's where we go with the quarterback position. And I've talked about this in the other draft strategy videos. You should not be forcing your picks with the quarterback position. You can see in this draft, Josh Allen went at the 207. You had like Lamar Jackson going at the 312. This is not the year to be reaching on quarterbacks. I understand you want to lock the position down, but it is nearly impossible, in my opinion, to like lose out and just have a terrible quarterback room unless you're in drafts where you have guys like drafting elite options and then doubling up with like the Staffords, the Rodgers, the Kirk Cousins, all of those guys, because typically guys take early, quarterback, they're only drafting one. You can see here, we go round 10, round 11, Jayden Daniels, Matthew Stafford, Daniels for that upside, rookie, has some uncertainty, Matthew Stafford for that weekly security. That is a really solid quarterback room, and we got them in like the double-digit rounds. So I like those two as like later round quarterback options. And then we wrap up this draft with Rico Dowdle and Dontavian Wicks. Dowdle, someone who could end up leading this Cowboys backfield. I think he's a really solid dart in round 12 on an offense that's going to be top 5, probably at worst like top 10 in the NFL. Getting a running back who's going to be a big piece of that offense, I think, is a smash pick. And then Wicks went with him again as like a later round option. I actually really like this team. I think the quarterback position, pretty solid considering we kind of punted it. Running backs, Jahmyr Gibbs, Raheem Mostert, Gus Edwards, Dowdle, I think are nice depth. And then obviously the strength of this team is through the wide receiver position. Puka, DJ Moore, Tank Dell, Pickens, Ladd McConkey, and then Wicks. A really, really strong wide receiver room there. Now, shifting in to the mock draft from pick 11, this is actually going to be another running back start, double hero RB, similar to the 9th pick, but I think we had Breece Hall and Saquon Barkley in that one. In this one, we have Jahmyr Gibbs and Jonathan Taylor. So those guys were just my best player available in both of these spots. So I think a decent start there, from a late first round pick. Then this is the draft I kind of referenced where we went earlier tight end. Travis Kelce here at the 311. Now, in my rankings, he wasn't necessarily best player available, but I wanted to just give you guys a look at what a draft could look like if you do get Kelce or Laporta falling. So we go Kelce in round 3. I think a lot of people will kind of like that value there. And then at this point, 3 rounds in, no wide receivers. We're just going to hammer the wide receiver position in the next 5 rounds. So we go Malik Nabers, Terry McLaurin, Keenan Allen, Ladd McConkey, and DeAndre Hopkins. Neighbors, someone who I really like in the 4th round. I think he's a nice pick. Terry McLaurin isn't someone who I've been crazy high on, but I think he's a pretty secure option here in the 5th. Keenan Allen, also someone who I probably won't have a ton of shares of, but coming off a big season, pretty high in this Bears offense. We go back to a rookie with Ladd McConkey, and then D-Hop. Honestly, this is kind of like a group of guys that I don't really target super heavily, especially the veterans, but D-Hop in round 8, I feel like that pick just makes a lot of sense. We go back to the running back position in round 9 with Trey Benson. This was another spot where we kind of punted the quarterback position. We didn't have an elite value fall to us. If Richardson fell, one more spot to the 511, I definitely would have considered him there, but he didn't. And after Richardson's off the board, not super interested in getting a quarterback in like round 6, 7, 8, even 9. I'd much rather just punt it and scoop up those late round options. That's what we did with Jayden Daniels and Trevor Lawrence. Also snagged Jalen Wright and Demario Douglas. So overall, I think that's a pretty solid looking team. Travis Kelce, elite tight end. We went late round quarterback again, but 2 guys I'm really high on as late round options. Running backs really strong with Jahmyr Gibbs, Jonathan Taylor. And I think for kind of waiting at the wide receiver position, definitely has some solid options here with Neighbors, Terry, Keenan Allen, McConkey, D-Hop, and then also, snagged Douglas as some depth there. So that was the second to last draft. The final one here from pick 12, the 112. This was actually pretty much a 0 RB team here. Just kind of how it played out. We saw that Jahmyr Gibbs went at the 107. The running backs were super pushed up. JT went at the 111. So we had falling wide receiver value. We went Puka Nacua, Garrett Wilson to start off this draft. I think a really, really nice start. Then I think we got some really nice value at the 3-4 turn also. Deebo Samuel, DJ Moore. Like Puka and Garrett Wilson are guys I view as round 1 picks. Deebo is someone who I think should be a round 2 pick, and then DJ Moore I think is much more of like an early round 3 option. So I think we got pretty much 4 straight values on those guys. Then we got pretty lucky here with a falling Mark Andrews. If we can get Andrews to fall here, honestly I probably would have gone with Anthony Richardson. But if you're going 0 RB, you definitely want at least an elite quarterback or an elite tight end. You don't want to punt like 3 different positions. You can end up in a rough spot. But so we have a solid start here. I think value-wise, 5 straight value picks. We go back to the wide receiver position with Amari Cooper, just my best player available. You may be wondering, like, why are you taking your 5th wide receiver who's going to be on the bench over a running back, quarterback, something like that. And for me, it just comes down to the fact that it's very unlikely you're going to have all 4 of those starting guys be healthy without bye weeks every single week. So I think having a 5th option It's just going to give you solid depth. The wide receiver, the flex are always going to be really strong for this team, so I'm totally cool with it. And I'm just not really trying to go out and reach on a running back. I don't think a Ramondre pick would have been all that bad, but you can see here in the next 4 rounds, we just hammer running back. All guys who I think are solid targets if you are going 0 RB. Jonathan Brooks in the 7th, Zach Moss in the 8th, then we went Brian Robinson and Gus Edwards at the 9-10 turn. All these guys, I guess except for Brooks, are kind of in ambiguous backfields for the Bengals. We don't really know who the starter is going to be. B-Rob competing with Eckler, Gus Edwards, you got Dobbins in the mix, Vidal from the draft. So all guys, who are in interesting situations, but all probably should be the favorites to lead their backfield. Another spot where we waited for quarterback went Trevor Lawrence, Matthew Stafford, 11-12 turn. Totally cool waiting for those guys. And then we wrap it up with maybe the best handcuff in the NFL. Elijah Mitchell still looks like the clear-cut running back 2 there. So I think this is a pretty unique start. I know a lot of people don't really love 0 RB, and it's not something that I go into drafts thinking like, this is what I'm going to do. But if the value is going to fall to me, I got 5 stud wide receivers, an elite tight end. I think the running backs we recovered pretty well on. And then the quarterback position, if we're waiting, I think those late round options are really, really solid. So here are the 4 drafts you can see on the screen here. Like I kind of talked about, I think the tight end position went pretty well. We got someone round 6 or earlier. I think all those picks were pretty decent value. Quarterback was the spot where we didn't get a ton of fallers. Like if you're not going to get the Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts at like the 3-4 turn and you don't want to reach for Lamar there, you may not be getting like the Anthony Richardsons to fall back to you at the 5-6. But like I said, this is not the year to panic and spend a pick that you don't need to on a quarterback to reach. You just wait, you snag those late round options. I think they'll be fine for fantasy this year, and you kind of get 2 swings at it since you are, kind of waiting. After going through these mock drafts, I do think I've come around a little bit to picking in the late first round. I still think it's probably like my least favorite chunk out of the 3, but I do think you can get some nice values, especially if you're getting guys like Puka, Garrett Wilson to kind of fall to the 2nd round. If you can double up on some of those late first round values, I think you can put together some solid teams. But let me know your thoughts. Do you like picking in the late first round? What are your thoughts on the mock draft? Thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you all in the next one.